Great moments in Auburn football history.
Auburn played Georgia in 1971. The stage was set for an outstanding football game. A capacity crowd of nearly 63,000 crammed into Sanford Stadium in Athens as the two undefeated teams met. The Tigers, led by Pat Sullivan and receivers Terry Beasley and Dick Schmaltz, jumped out to an early lead, only to have Georgia tie the game at 14-14. Auburn went ahead 21-14, but Georgia scored again in the fourth quarter. But this time the Bulldogs came up a point short when Auburn's Roger Mitchell blocked the point after. The next play from scrimmage, Sullivan connected with Beasley for a 70-yard touchdown pass to break the game open for the Tigers. Sullivan passed for 248 yards and 4 touchdowns in the game, and Auburn defeated Georgia 35-20, and another great moment in Auburn football history.
Great moments in Auburn football history.
On October 31st, 1970, Auburn entered a hostile Florida field in Gainesville where the Gators were set to revenge that 38-12 loss the previous year. But as it turned out, the game would be one of the best all-around performances on record for the Tigers. It didn't take long for Auburn to get the upper hand as they led 35-0 at halftime. When the game was over, quarterback Pat Sullivan had passed for 4 touchdowns. The Tigers had rushed for 4 more, and James Owens had returned a punt 89 yards for a touchdown. Auburn won the game by the score of 63-14, which still ranks as the most points scored against an SEC opponent. It was a big game for the Tigers and another great moment in Auburn football history.
Great moments in Auburn football history.
For the first part of the 1954 season, Auburn used a system of platooning its players. But on November the 6th, 1954 in Birmingham, Coach Shug Jordan used the best players throughout the game when the Tigers faced an undefeated Miami. By the fourth quarter, Miami led 13-0, and it appeared the 1-3 Tigers were headed for another loss. But behind the running of fullback Joe Childress, Auburn took control of the game. Childress scored a touchdown that tied the game and kicked the extra point to win it. Childress gained 164 yards in the game, which Auburn won 14-13. Another great moment in Auburn football history.
Great moments in Auburn football history.
For 40 years, Auburn and Alabama did not meet on the football field. In 1948, the first year the game was rekindled, Auburn suffered a 55-0 loss. But the next year, the Tigers redeemed themselves. On December 3rd, 1949, the two teams met at Legion Field in Birmingham before a crowd of 44,000. An interception for a touchdown by Johnny Wallace gave the Tigers an early lead, but Alabama tied the game at 7-7. Then in the third quarter, quarterback Travis Tidwell connected with Bill Davis for the go-ahead touchdown. Alabama scored again late in the game, but a missed extra point kept Auburn in the lead. Travis Tidwell was the hero of the game as Auburn defeated Alabama 14-13 in a great moment in Auburn football history.
Great moments in Auburn football history.
On November 27, 1982, the great interstate rivalry of Auburn versus Alabama continued at the annual site of Legion Field in Birmingham. Auburn trailed 22-14 going into the fourth quarter, but a 53-yard run by freshman sensation Bo Jackson set up an Auburn field goal. That cut the Crimson Tide's lead to 5 points, 22-17. The Auburn defense stopped Alabama after 1 first down, and the Tiger offense took over at its own 34-yard line. 14 plays and 66 yards later, Jackson went over the top to give Auburn a 23-22 lead. Auburn had defeated Alabama 23-22 for the first time in 10 years, and another great moment in Auburn football history.
Great moments in Auburn football history.
In 1955, Auburn's biggest rival was Georgia Tech, then a member of the Southeastern Conference. Part of the reason for that rivalry was the fact that Auburn had not beaten Tech for 15 straight years. On October 15th, 40,000 fans piled into Grant Field in Atlanta to watch the only undefeated teams in the SEC meet. Alton Shell scored for Auburn in the first quarter to give the Tigers an early lead. By the fourth quarter, Tech had scored twice, missing both extra points to make the score Georgia Tech 12, Auburn 7. Early in the fourth quarter, however, the Auburn offense, led by quarterback Howell Tubbs, receiver Jerry Elliott, and fullback Bob James, drove the ball 82 yards with Tubbs scoring on a 1-yard run. Georgia Tech never threatened, and Auburn won the game 14-12 in a great moment in Auburn football history.
Great moments in Auburn football history.
The Florida Gators had never won a game in what was then Cliff House Stadium in Auburn, but 1969 was supposed to be the year that Florida broke the jinx. On November the 1st, 1969, the Florida team came to Auburn boasting two of the most heralded sophomores in the country in quarterback John Reeves and wide receiver Carlos Alvarez. But Auburn had two sophomores of their own, a quarterback named Pat Sullivan and a receiver named Terry Beasley. Sullivan and Beasley established themselves as the South's premier offensive players in the game, but in the end, it was Auburn's defense that stopped the Gators. The Tigers intercepted 9 of Reeves' passes, with linebacker Sonny Ferguson picking off 3 en route to National Lineman of the Week honors. The Tigers were victorious 38-12 in another great moment in Auburn football history.
Great moments in Auburn football history.
A 10-1 record in the Southeastern Conference Championship earned the 1983 Auburn Tigers a trip to New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl. There, the Michigan Wolverines would be the final challenge in a schedule that rated as the toughest in the nation. Michigan scored a touchdown in the first quarter to take an early lead, but that was all the hard-hitting Tiger defense would allow. Halfback Bo Jackson closed out a brilliant sophomore season by gaining 130 yards on 22 carries and was named the Sugar Bowl's most valuable player. But senior place kicker Al Del Greco, who had already kicked 2 field goals in the game, kicked a 19-yard field goal with 23 seconds remaining in the game to give Auburn a 9-7 victory. The win gave the SEC champions an 11-1 record, a third-place national finish, and a great moment in Auburn football history.
Great moments in Auburn football history.
Auburn and Georgia, the oldest college football rivalry in the South, have produced some of the classic games on the gridiron. But the confrontation of November the 21st, 1942 remains one of the greatest moments in Auburn football history. Tigers, coached by Jack Morrow, met the Bulldogs at the annual site of Columbus, Georgia's Memorial Stadium. Georgia, led by that year's Heisman Trophy winner Frank Sinkwich, entered the game undefeated and headed for the Rose Bowl and a possible national championship. The sellout crowd of 18,000 expected to see Georgia win the game with ease. But the running of Monk Gafford and Jim Reynolds out of the T formation and a tough Tiger defense shocked the Bulldogs. Auburn outrushed Georgia 335 yards to 37 and won the game by the score 27-13 in one of the greatest moments in Auburn football history.
Great moments in Auburn football history.
On December the 2nd, 1972, Coach Ralph Shug Jordan led his 8-1 Auburn Tigers to Legion Field in Birmingham to face the undefeated Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama dominated the majority of the game and led 17-3 late in the fourth quarter. But the Amazings, as they were called, used 2 almost identical plays to turn the game around for Auburn. With a little more than 5 minutes remaining in the game, Auburn's Bill Newton broke through the line and blocked an Alabama punt. David Langner picked up the ball and raced 25 yards for a touchdown. Then, with less than 2 minutes left and Alabama punting again, an instant replay saw Newton block another punt and Langner score a second touchdown. Gardner Jack kicked the point after to make the final score, Auburn 17, Alabama 16, and another great moment in Auburn football history.
Great moments in Auburn football history.
The 1958 season opener marked the first time a regular season Auburn game had been nationally televised. The Tigers met Tennessee Volunteers in Birmingham. The Vols brought the old single-wing offense to Legion Field, an offense notorious for stumping defense. But not in this game. Auburn set an NCAA record for holding Tennessee to no first downs and negative yardage rushing. A true defensive struggle saw the two teams remain scoreless going into the final quarter. The Auburn defense, anchored by Outland Trophy winner Zeke Smith, continued to shut down the Vols, while the Auburn offense came through to make the final score Auburn 13, Tennessee nothing. Another great moment in Auburn football history.
Great moments in Auburn football history.
In 1971, Auburn was noted for having a high-powered offense, but that team also possessed a lot of character and will to win, as evidenced by the September 25th game against Tennessee. The Tigers traveled to Knoxville to take on the Volunteers in Neyland Stadium. A great defensive performance by both teams had limited the scoring to field goals, and Tennessee led 9-3 late in the fourth quarter. But a determined Tiger offense, led by quarterback Pat Sullivan, took possession of the ball at their own 14-yard line with 6:07 left in the game. Sullivan's passing to receivers Terry Beasley and Dick Schmaltz took the Tigers down the field, where tailback Harry Unger scored from 5 yards out. Gardner Jett kicked a point after to give Auburn a 10-9 win over Tennessee in a great moment in Auburn football history.
Great moments in Auburn football history.
The Auburn Tigers made their 6th Gator Bowl appearance on December the 30th, 1974, when they faced the Texas Longhorns. With Ralph Shug Jordan of Auburn and Darrell Royal of Texas, the game featured 2 of the country's top coaches. But from the opening kickoff, Jordan's team was in control. The Longhorns, led by Earl Campbell, were stopped on their opening drive and never seemed to recover. But Auburn, with Phil Gargis leading the way, scored on their first possession with the Ed Butler scoring on a 7-yard pass. Another touchdown pass from Gargis to Butler, a touchdown run by Mitzi Jackson, a block punt for a safety by James McKinney, and a field goal by Chris Wilson gave Auburn 27 points, while Texas managed only a field goal. A great moment in Auburn football history.
Great moments in Auburn football history.
On November the 12th, 1983, Auburn traveled to Sanford Stadium in Athens, where the Tigers were set to earn a trip to New Orleans and the Sugar Bowl. A tackle-breaking run by sophomore Bo Jackson set up the Tigers' only touchdown. A 4-yard run by halfback Lionel James. Place kicker Al Del Greco kicked field goals of 21 and 41 yards to give Auburn a 13-0 lead. Georgia scored a touchdown with 2 minutes remaining in the game and recovered an onside kick. But the Tiger defense held strong, and the Bulldogs lost 6 yards on 4 plays, and Auburn won the game 13-7. The win earned the Tigers a trip to New Orleans and at least a share of the 1983 crown. A great moment in Auburn football history.
Great moments in Auburn football history.
Auburn met Alabama in Legion Field in Birmingham with an undefeated SEC record and a chance to capture the school's first conference crown in 26 years. Halfback Bo Jackson capped off an All-American year by rushing for 256 yards in the game. He scored on touchdown runs of 69 and 71 yards, with his last score in the third quarter the difference in the game. But as great as Jackson was, he had to share the spotlight with the Auburn defense, which held strong to give Auburn a 23-20 victory as the rain poured in Birmingham. The win gave the Tigers sole possession of the 1983 championship and a 10-1 regular season record and a perfect 6-0 conference mark. A great moment in Auburn football history. This is Coach Pat Dye of the Auburn Tigers inviting you to relive the great games of Auburn football. Watch for the great moments in Auburn football history on this station.